The change of seasons often signals immune support time. Whether you're moving from winter to spring or summer to autumn, provide your immune system with a little bit of love so it can shore you up against allergies, colds and flu. Today I'm sharing my favourite immune go-to, elderberry. I'll be sharing a bit of the science, its medicinal actions and a recipe for making elderberry Rob and elderberry syrup. What's a Rob? I'll tell you all about it in this episode. Let's get started, shall we? Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Project Joyful podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Tutty, your medical herbalist and high performance coach. So, hey, Project Joyful isn't just about being happy. It's about consciously creating a life you love. It's about remembering how to reconnect with your soul-centered joy. You know, that joy that comes from doing what you love, from living on purpose, and from being in a life that allows you to experience deep joy moment by moment. So hey, let's get started, shall we? With the change of seasons comes an increase in allergies, colds and flu. As we move from summer to autumn in the southern hemisphere, elderberry once more becomes my hot drink staple. I combine an ice cube of super strong ginger decoction with a tablespoon of elderberry Rob, some thyme honey and top it up with boiling water. It's delicious and it's strongly antiviral. Keeps me going all winter long. And if you're in the northern hemisphere moving from winter to spring, consider adding the elderflowers to your arsenal. A wonderful decongestant. They're a key ingredient in my hay fever tea. Want the recipe? I'll post it on Instagram this week at Tracy Tutty. So in herbal medicine we use the black elder, Sambucus nigra. We use the berries or fructus and the flowers or floss. So when you're scouring the ingredients and you see Sambucus nigra floss, you'll know it contains elderflower. If you see Sambucus nigra fructus, you've got elderberries in your product. Now, just because it's natural, it doesn't mean it's good for you. And this is particularly true of elder, because the berries contain cyanogenic glycosides, which become less active when treated with heat, which is why we always heat our recipe. Cyanogenic glycosides are potentially toxic and life-threatening because your body can break them down and turn them into cyanide. For this reason, do not eat raw elderberries. Follow the traditional syrup recipes to turn what could potentially be poisonous if eaten raw into a healing tonic. I'll share my elderberry Rob and elderberry syrup recipe at the end of this episode. Save yourself some time when you're harvesting your elderberries and remove those tiny little berries by running a fork through the florets. There's no need to pick them off one by one. The berries come pre-packaged with their own pectin, so they can also be used to set a woodland jam or jelly. And from a nutritional perspective, elderberry is a complete protein. It's got 16 amino acids, 9 of which are essential. Great news if you're vegetarian. Now, although I'm talking about the elder for immunity, it does so much more than that. Research has supported its use as an anti-inflammatory, a mild pain reliever and a potent antioxidant thanks to those rich blue anthocyanidins. But, interestingly, elderflowers actually have a higher antioxidant value than the berries. So it's not all about that gorgeous purple berry colour. There's emerging research suggesting its use in supporting the complications of diabetes, both in its ability to support the body in releasing excess body fat and in its ability to support the body in improving bone density. Now that's a win for anyone who's got osteopenia or osteoporosis. Emerging research has also reported that elderflower tea may increase glucose metabolism and encourage insulin secretion by creating more of those pancreatic beta cells. Now you know how I love to keep the herbs practical. So in addition to sharing some of the research, I'm also going to share my favourite elderberry syrup recipe. So elderberry hails from Europe and it's been used as a herbal medicine since records began and before. The Greek physician Hippocrates referred to elderberries as the medicine chest of all herbs. Elder was a tree of the Druids.
said to be the keeper of beginnings and endings. It was thought that carrying elder branches and twigs could protect you from harm, particularly those mischievous fairy spirits. In terms of the medicinal use of elderberries, think colds, fevers, coughing, nasal congestion, and a runny nose. You can also use it as a preventative during winter months to strengthen your immune system. The elderflower is preferred when you want to break a fever, when you want to decongest or dry up a runny nose or streaming eyes. The flavonoids found in elderflowers are mostly responsible for its diaphoretic, antipyretic and diuretic actions. If you're fighting a cold, I'd use the elderflowers and the elderberries together. The anti-inflammatory and antibacterial actions of elderflower make it a useful gargle when there's a sore throat. And be warned, if you are going to have a lot of elderberry, elderberries are one of nature's laxatives. They're a wonderful detoxifier. The antiviral and antibacterial aspects of elderberry has been studied extensively, with research confirming its ability to inhibit a variety of gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria, including the MRSA superbug, Staphylococcus aureus. Interestingly, elderflowers have shown to have a higher antimicrobial efficacy and broader antibacterial action than elderberry. But when it comes to upper respiratory tract infections, it's elderberry which has a more potent effect. What I love most about elderberry is that it is antibacterial and antiviral. I mean, there's no point taking an antibiotic when you have a virus, such as a cold or a flu. It won't make any difference. Although taking a herb that acts across both virus and bacteria, it does reduce the risk of a secondary bacterial infection occurring when you're dealing with a significant upper respiratory tract infection. So, how do I like to take my elderberry? Well, I prefer it as a rob rather than a syrup. A rob is like a syrup, but it doesn't use added sugar. Start by making an elderberry decoction. A decoction is like a tea, but you simmer it in a pan to break down, well, in this case, berries, but it's also the preferred method when making a tea with barks and seeds. So what do you need to do? First of all, strip your berries off their florets with a fork. Give them a wash, and then simmer them with your chosen spices for up to an hour, half and half with water. You'll know when it's done because the berries have lost their form. Now I like to use cinnamon, a bit of star anise and ginger as my accompanying spices. When it's done, mash any remaining berries with a potato masher and pass it through a sieve. Once you have your liquid, return it to the stovetop and simmer until your liquid has reduced again by half. And that's your rob. That's all there is to it. Add it to some sterilised bottles and take a tablespoon a day as a preventative through the winter. Now, it doesn't have a preservative, so I tend to leave these in the fridge. Like my ginger decoction ice cubes, you can also freeze the rob into ice cubes. And if you're making a syrup, will you add an equal portion of sugar to the decoction? I like to add a bit of lemon in there to bring down the sweetness, and there's no need to reduce it by half. Simmer until your sugar and decoction is one, so your sugar's dissolved, and pour it into sterilised bottles. Now please remember, plant medicine is potent medicine. If you have any underlying health conditions, you're pregnant or you're trying to get pregnant or you're lactating or you're taking any medications, don't just rely on the information in this episode. As you've seen with elderberry, just because it's natural, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you. Please do get individual advice by consulting with your medical herbalist. Not only are we trained in which herbs affect a particular health condition or your current life season, we're also trained in herb-drug interactions and in choosing exactly the right herb or combination for herbs for you. Sending you lots of love. Bye for now.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's podcast. Can I ask you a favour? If our conversation spoke to you today, could you please take a moment to leave a 5-star review? Your review will help people discover this podcast, and together we can create a world where there's even more love and more laughter. And if you want to hear more from the Project Joyful podcast, just click the subscribe button. Bye for now.